I got home and was greeted by a slight mess, as always. Amelia and I have 2 kids, so I'm used to scattered toys and slightly carelessly tossed things. But today, tired after a long day, I felt annoyed to see her coat carelessly tossed on a chair in the hallway. I walked over to put it away in the closet. It was one of those little things I did day in and day out without thinking. As I picked it up, something fell out of the pocket. It was a business card. On the back, handwritten, was an email address and phone number, but that wasn't what caught my attention. At the bottom, in uneven handwriting, was written, "Thank you for a wonderful night. I look forward to the next one." The world around me froze. The sounds of the house, the children's laughter from the living room, the dogs barking coming from the street, all disappeared. I stood there, clutching that card in my hand, and felt the ground go out from under my feet. My head filled with a million questions. What is this? Who is it? And most importantly, why? I always thought our marriage to Amelia was a fortress. We've been together for 15 years. 2 kids, a house with a green lawn, and a dog that wags its tail as soon as I walk in the door. We had everything on a schedule. Breakfast at 7:30, I go to work, she drives the kids to school, we gather around the table in the evening. Routine. I'd say reliable, like a Swiss watch. Routine. I thought that's what happiness was. Now, I look at this card, and all my memories of us, of our perfect life, seem fake. I remember Amelia smiling more often lately, how she started buying new underwear, how she started staying late at work, citing an influx of clients. I didn't pay much attention to it because I wanted to believe it. I hear her calling me from the kitchen, asking how my day was. My mouth opens to answer, but the words get stuck in my throat. What am I going to say? That I found this card? What do I know? I clench the card in my fist and feel it crumple. It's not just a piece of paper anymore. It's proof. Proof that my fortress has collapsed. I clench the card in my fist and slip it into my pants pocket. Cold, hard paper. It burned my skin like a coal. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, and went into the kitchen. Amelia was standing at the stove, stirring something in a pot. Her back was to me, and for a moment I felt such a strong urge to go over and hug her, like I'd done 1,000 times before. But I couldn't. There was a wall between us now, invisible but strong as steel. And that wall was made of the card in my pocket. "Hi, honey," she said without turning around. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said, my voice sounding alien. My voice sounded foreign. I sat down at the table and pretended to look at my phone. But really, I was watching her. I saw her hands holding the ladle, her hair in a sloppy bun. I saw it all, but now with a new, suspicious gaze. Before, I had only seen her as Amelia, my wife, the mother of my children. Now, I saw her as a woman who led a double life, a woman who was probably cheating on me. At dinner, I tried to be casual. I laughed at the kids' jokes, talked about my work, but the same question kept running through my mind. With whom? Who is this person thanking her for a wonderful night? After dinner, Amelia suggested we watch a movie. We sat down on the couch like we always did. I put my arms around her and she pressed herself against me. But I didn't feel warm. I felt empty. Images kept popping up in my head that I hadn't noticed before. I remembered how she had become more secretive. Her phone was always on silent mode and lay screen down. She started staying late at work, explaining it was due to the influx of clients. I used to believe every word she said. Now, every word seemed like a lie. Amelia went to take a shower before going to bed. I heard the water rumble and felt a rush of adrenaline. This was my chance. I quietly crept into the bedroom where her phone lay on the nightstand, screen down as always. I knew the password, but it had never occurred to me to use it before. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone. I unlocked it and started frantically going through her messages, her email, her social media, but nothing. She was so careful not to leave anything in plain sight. All correspondence had been deleted, photos had been scrubbed. I was about to give up hope when I accidentally went to the Notes app, and there, among the shopping lists and to-do reminders, I found a note called "One More Night." I opened it, and my heart stopped. The note detailed how she met him at a coffee shop, how they went on dates, how he'd given her a bracelet I'd seen on her arm a few days ago but thought she'd bought it herself, how they spent a weekend together at a hotel on the coast when she supposedly went to a conference. I read every word, and each new fact was like a stabbing blow. I couldn't breathe. I saw her writing about him, about how she felt alive and wanted, something she said had been missing from our marriage for a long time. I saw her comparing him to me, and the comparison was not in my favor. I sat clutching my phone in my hand and read her secret diary, and every line was written with the blood of my heart. I didn't just find out about the affair. I learned that she was unhappy with me, that she was looking for something I couldn't give her. I heard the water in the shower turn off. I had to quickly put my phone back down. I did, but I was no longer the person who had picked it up. I was the person who had just learned the whole truth, but hadn't learned the most important thing, the name. I had to find out the truth, and I needed hard evidence. I came up with a plan. I told Amelia that I had been rushed on a business trip for a few days, that I needed to go to the coast to take care of a major project. She didn't even ask any unnecessary questions. I booked a room at the very hotel she'd written about in her secret diary. I was scared and in pain, but I couldn't stop. I took with me only the most essential clothes and binoculars. I had to follow her. I had to catch her. I checked into a room overlooking the hotel parking lot, and I waited. A few hours passed, and I was beginning to think I made a mistake. Maybe she wasn't coming. Maybe it was just a one-night stand. And then I saw her car. She was parked in the farthest spot. I was getting ready to see a stranger, but Amelia got out of the car, followed by my lawyer, Mark. My best friend, my counselor, the man I trusted implicitly. They weren't holding hands, they weren't hugging. They looked like conspirators. I sat in my hotel room, binoculars clutched in my hand, and felt the world crumble around me. I saw them enter the hotel, and I realized this wasn't just cheating. This was something much more sinister. I realized that just watching them wasn't enough. I had to hear them talking. But how? Suddenly a thought struck me. The balcony. We had adjoining balconies in our hotel. I quietly stepped out on a mind and saw that the balcony door of the neighboring room was open. I carefully climbed over the low fence and froze. I saw them. They were lying in bed, covered with a blanket, talking. I could hear every word they were saying. They were talking about money. My money. They talked about how to get me to sign papers, how to divide my assets. They talked about how I would soon lose everything and that I wouldn't even realize what had happened. As soon as he signs, we'll be free, Mark said. And we'll have everything. I can't wait, Amelia replied. I'm so tired of him and his routine. Soon we'll be together and he'll be left with nothing. I stood on the balcony, in the shade, and felt my legs shaking. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a conspiracy to rob me of everything. They didn't just want to leave. They wanted to rob me. My wife and my best friend. I stepped away from the door and I felt dizzy. I had to stop them. I had to figure out how to uncover their plan before they ruined my life. I sat in my hotel room, thoughts swarming in my head. Screaming, arguing, making a scandal, it would all be too easy and stupid. They would just laugh at me and continue their plot. No, I had to act differently. I had to use their greed against themselves. I had to make them believe they were winning and snatch victory from under their noses at the last minute. I returned home the next day as if nothing had happened. Amelia greeted me with a smile. I looked at her, that beautiful false smile, and thought about what she and my best friend were planning to do to me. I pretended to believe her and began my game. I started playing the role of the unhappy husband who is struggling with problems at work. I started talking about how hard it was to run the business, how the company was going through a bad time. I talked about how I needed to sell some of my assets to save her from bankruptcy. I knew that Amelia would be relaying this information to Mark. I knew their plan would start to change. I began to prepare a trap. I contacted my bank and transferred all my assets to a new account that no one knew about. I drew up fictitious documents to sell my house and business, but with a small, inconspicuous detail that made them invalid. I pretended to be in dire need of money and started asking Mark to help me draw up these documents. After all, he was my best friend and lawyer. I set up a meeting with Mark and Amelia at my office. I told them that I needed to sign all the documents to get the money as soon as possible. I knew they would be there. I had installed hidden cameras in my office beforehand. I had a tape recorder hidden in my pen. I was going to record the entire conversation and all their actions. When they came in, I pretended to feel depressed. I told them that I trusted them completely and was willing to sign all the papers. Mark readily handed me the papers. I, pretending to read, discreetly activated the voice recorder. I asked Mark and Amelia to clarify some points for me. They, unaware of my recording, described in detail how my property would pass to them, how I would end up with nothing, and how they would live happily with my money. After I wrote everything down, I pretended to sign the documents. But instead of signing, I wrote on each page, "This document is a forgery and void." I gave them the papers, and they, with shining eyes, hurriedly left. I then filed a lawsuit with the Bar Association against Mark. I attached all the tapes of him discussing the fraudulent scheme with me, as well as the forged documents he had prepared. The bar board, after reviewing the materials, disbarred him. His career was ruined. It worked perfectly. Mark lost everything he had, and his name was disgraced. But Amelia, my ex-wife, got her share of misery, which was much more subtle. I didn't just divorce her. I made sure that our mutual friends, whom she thought were hers, knew of her betrayal. I sent them all tapes of conversations where she and Mark discussed how to deceive me. I showed her her true colors. She ended up losing all her friends. She became an outcast in our small town where everyone knows each other. Every time she went into a cafe, people turned their backs on her, and when she tried to talk to any of her former acquaintances, they just ignored her. She found herself all alone, with no support and no friends. After the divorce, I made sure that the news of her cheating made it into the local press. Her name appeared in the papers and her reputation was ruined. She lost her job at the school because the parents didn't want their children taught by a woman who turned out to be a fraud. She couldn't get any other jobs in town because everyone knew who she was. She was forced to leave, leaving everything she had behind. The worst thing for her was losing the children. The court, based on my evidence, ruled that she could not be a guardian, and the children stayed with me. I moved them to another town so they wouldn't hear the gossip and see her humiliation. Amelia could only see them under supervision. I moved with the children to a new town, where no one knew about our past. I devoted myself to them. I helped with classes, took them to practice, taught them to fish like my father had once taught me. I did everything I could to make them feel safe and happy, and over time, my pain began to subside. I focused on the business. I realized that I had everything I needed to succeed: experience, knowledge, and most importantly, the desire to build something new. I launched a startup that quickly began to grow. My ideas, which seemed crazy to me before, were now bringing me success and money. 5 years ago, I met her, Lily. She was the complete opposite of Emily. Where there was lying, she had honesty. Where there was greed, she had kindness. Where there was coldness, she had warmth. I was afraid to open up, afraid to trust, but she didn't rush me. She was just there for me. We built our relationship brick by brick, on a foundation of trust and respect. We weren't afraid to talk about the past, and I could see how she empathized with my pain. She loved my children as if they were her own, and they responded in kind. In her eyes, I saw not self-interest, but genuine love. We started our family, and soon we had another child, a little boy who brought so much joy and light into our lives. Looking at him, at the way he sleeps in Lily's arms, I feel truly blessed. I don't regret what happened. After all, it was that betrayal that helped me become the man I am today: a loving husband, a happy father, and most importantly, a man who knows what true love is.